Robert Gregory is Chief Executive or CEO of the Australian Jewish Association, also President. Robert, I think you're in Tel Aviv today. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a bit difficult with communications and such, but what are your thoughts on this move to recognising a Palestinian state?
Well, it was interesting to see the UK, France trying to redraw the borders in the Middle East. I think that's half the reason we're in some of these problems. So I think declarations can be made in Europe or even from the Australian government. It will have no impact on the ground. Neither Jews nor Arabs support the two-state solution. It's not an idea that's very popular in the Middle East. It's popular in Western governments. But I think one of the impacts will be that this will be seen as a major reward for the October 7 massacre. These countries did not recognize a state of Palestine beforehand, and now following the massacre, they're moving to do so. So I think this will be a signal to groups all around the world who've been peacefully wanting a homeland or trying to create a state, that the way to do it is to follow the example of the Palestinian Arabs, and murder, rape, these sort of things pay off. You'll get Western recognition. It's a very dangerous move.
Why is the West or the rest of the world in many places pushing for a two-state solution? And you just said then that it's not wanted within Israel and within the other Arab states. Why isn't it wanted?
Well, I think when we say the West, we should be clear the Trump administration is very much against this move. So another impact may damage ties between the Albanese government and the Trump administration, which are already pretty bad. Albanese hasn't been able to get a meeting. Why are they pushing for it? I don't know. It could be several reasons. I mean, everyone wants to step in and feel like they're helping a situation, but we know the case is it usually doesn't work. Western interference, particularly in the Middle East, does not usually produce positive results. So I think it's a way for Western governments, and we have to remember that particularly Britain, France, and even Australia have very large and growing Muslim populations, which are now making up a large voting base, and these countries need to give some results for their voters.
What are your expectations of the UN General Assembly?
So the UN General Assembly has made various motions and resolutions over the years. They have little impact. Obviously, the US has a veto in the Security Council, so nothing too crazy can actually get past the US. They usually veto anything that's too dangerous. But I mean, it's symbolic to try and create a state of Palestine. It doesn't meet any of the criteria under international law for a state. It's divided into two territories. There's no government. They don't exercise sovereignty. We don't even hear what these borders will be. So it has no defined borders. So it really, I mean, the UN can declare it on paper. What we saw in Gaza was the closest we've seen to a Palestinian state. So Israel left the area in 2005, and the population elected Hamas, which is a terrorist organization prescribed under Australian law. They elected that as their government, and they have entered into constant wars. So this would be what a Palestinian state would be. It would be similar to Syria, to Iraq. It would be another failed state in the Middle East, and it would be a terrible idea.
What about your association, the Australian Jewish Association? What's what do you think their thoughts are? I know you're the CEO and president, but what about the members, their thoughts on these latest two developments? We have Starmer and Albanese, and of course Macron, and probably most of Europe now sort of pushing for this two-state solution. So within Australia, your organisation, I would imagine it's in lockstep with yourself. What about from within Israel? Is there a move at all that would support this?
So the Jewish community in Australia is very disappointed in the Albanese government. We have been since shortly after it was elected. It's been one move after another of negative moves. So there would be no surprises if they take the Australian government to follow some of the moves we've seen in Europe. The opposition is fighting against this. They can't have too much of an impact, but it's encouraging to see at least that it's not a bipartisan move. It would be an independent foreign policy move that would be quite divisive in Australian politics. And I think some of the smaller parties on the right would also not be in favor of it. In terms of Israel, again, Israeli-Australian relations were very good until the Albanese government came to power. So I think the Israeli government is not very happy. We know the Israeli Prime Minister has spoken out against the Albanese government on a couple of occasions, which is quite rare for an Israeli Prime Minister to get involved in that way, and the Foreign Minister too. So I think there would be disappointment, but no one would be too surprised.
Mm. Is there any possible chance of this two-state solution, or is that just a bunch of hot air, basically? What's your thoughts? I mean, it does. I mean, a two-state solution with those words, two-state solution, it would seem that it is a solution.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very nice when it's worded that way. I often hear it referred to as the two-state delusion. I don't think there's much hope of it. We've seen the Palestinian Arab population is quite extreme. I mean, they elected a terrorist group, and the other areas where they mostly live do not have democratic elections. So in the area that's often referred to as the West Bank or Judea Samaria, there hasn't been an election in 20 years because the local population would vote for Hamas. So I don't think there's any chance of it working. I think in Israel, a lot of people were hopeful for maybe two states, but I think October 7 killed that idea because if there would be a state with an army, with an air force, able to fly planes, like that would just be used against Israel, and it would be war after war after war. So I don't think it's realistic in the Middle East, but it's an idea that's very popular on the left in universities, in left-wing capitals around the world.
Where will this, not when, but where will this end?
So I think there's some very positive trends. The Abraham Accords, which brought peace between Israel and several Arab countries, most notably the United Arab Emirates, were very good. That's the model to pursue. Hopefully the Saudis and more Muslim countries recognize Israel, make peace, and people can live together. I think the Gaza war is starting to wind down. It's not going to end while there's still Israeli hostages held there. So they all need to be released one way or another, but things are winding down in the Middle East. I think a lot of these statements coming from European capitals have not been very helpful. They've made Hamas harden their positions. They've realized there's no point in negotiating because the European capitals will give in anyway and give in to their demands. But we're hopeful that an agreement can be made, the hostages released, and I think everyone wants the war to wind down and end.
When this eventually ends, and one day it will, there's been a lot of talk about Netanyahu. He'll be up in front of the courts for various indiscrepancies, not with the actual war itself. There's other countries that would quite possibly like to have him in front of a jury, but that's not going to happen. But what about his future, Netanyahu? I mean, if this thing, just say if it finishes, say by Christmas, will he, because the talk is that he is in a spot of bother, so will he be regarded then within Israel as a hero or as that person that avoided accountability and not fronting up to the courts in the first place?
So he's a very divisive figure in Israel. He obviously has a very large supporter base. He keeps winning elections. He's the longest serving prime minister in Israel. And we should note elections are not due for a while now, not till the end of 2026. So technically he could hold on. But as you mentioned, he has had some legal troubles. They've been slowly moving through the courts. Many people view this as lawfare, as similar to what President Trump faced, to what the former leader in Brazil faced, a right-wing leader being hauled before the courts on quite spurious charges. So I don't know whether the court cases will end up. They're not particularly serious. They're over things like receiving cigars and champagne, small amounts. So the Israeli voters, how will they view him? He definitely is viewed as holding some responsibility for October 7 happening. But on the other hand, he's also viewed as the leader that stood up to the Biden administration, that has the warm relationship with President Trump, that managed to carry out the strike on the Iranian nuclear program. So I think it remains to be seen whether Israelis will reward him for his successes or punish him for his failures. Although it should be noted, even a leader as strong as Churchill, after World War II, after the amazing job he did, he lost the election. So there's no guarantee of anything.
Is peace achieved? can you actually achieve peace? I know at the moment we have a ceasefire with Iran, but can you actually achieve peace in the Middle East? Well, first of all, can you achieve peace? And second thing is, can you achieve it with force? Because at the moment, we see the constant bombardment by Israel and the attack from the US onto Iran. And in Iran in particular, it created a ceasefire. Now, who knows how long that will last for? Do you think instead of creating peace, it just organises people to retaliate and the hatred just grow and grow and grow?
Well, I think we have to be realistic. I mean, I don't think we can make everyone like each other in the Middle East. I don't think that sort of peace is likely in a generation or two, but we can certainly have the absence of war and remove threats, and that's something that force can do. So Hamas used to be able to fire rockets into Israel, but they've been decimated in the war. They don't pose a major threat in that way. They can't harm and kill civilians in Israel. So threats can be removed. Will the population like Israel? No, they didn't beforehand. That's why we're in this situation. I think that for that to happen, there needs to be structural changes in the education system, a re-indoctrination of the population that has been so radicalized. We saw similar things in Nazi Germany. I often make the comparison with the Hitler Youth, young people that their futures looked terrible, they were brainwashed, similar in Japan. And through education, the West invested a lot in making these countries and these people productive members of the world. It was possible. It did take a long occupation of both Germany and Japan for that to happen, but it is possible. But I think those things are further off. I think the main focus should be on the absence of war. So ending the wars, ending the threats, and then we can later talk about whether we can have friendship and peace and those type of things.
Many would say that if you stop bombing the Palestinians, it would actually create peace. Surely there's not much more else to bomb or to fire rockets at or shoot at. Perhaps we should be stopping now. I mean, because it is becoming an abomination, and even you must agree that for innocent people, regardless of which side, innocent people are dying, and there is no justification for innocent people to die.
Well, no one was bombing, the Palestinians were bombing Gaza on October 7th. So it wasn't a response to attacks. It was an attack on Israel that's been responded to. And I don't think it's going to end until, I mean, the Israeli public is united that the hostages need to return. There's 50 people being held in dungeons and tunnels in Gaza. 20 of them are believed to be alive. So there's major support in Israel to bring these people home, and they're not going to just end the war and abandon and leave them. Obviously, the suffering of the population of Gaza is terrible. I mean, nobody wants them to suffer. It's the responsibility of their leaders and the people that began a war. Whenever you begin a war, your own population will suffer, especially if you start a war against a much more powerful country. But obviously, whatever we can do to alleviate the suffering, and that's the international community, that's Israel, everyone should do. And it's encouraging to see there's now aid drops. Various air forces are dropping aid, including the Israeli Air Force. There's centers being set up for aid. There are problems with Hamas still around, still stealing the aid that should go to the civilian populations. We may have to look at other ideas. President Trump has his idea of moving the population of Gaza somewhere else temporarily while rebuilding can happen. They can be better looked after. That's one option. But whatever can be done to alleviate the suffering of civilians while still acknowledging there is a war going on, so people will suffer. And the easiest way to end all this is for Hamas to release the hostages and the war ends.
Yeah, we could have a longer discussion. We can't because you've taken this time out, and we do appreciate it very, very much. And we'll have you back because there's a couple of things I like to chat about, and we need more time. It's been a real pleasure, sir. Robert Gregory, the CEO and President of the Australian Jewish Association. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Mike.